Hi, I'm Art Suwansang with ArtIsRight. I'm a BenQ brand ambassador and an X-Rite Colorati and just a color expert in general. And in this video, what I like to do is show you guys how to calibrate your laptop or any device with a built-in screen for that matter. So in this case, I have two devices showing here. I have a Mac device, this is a MacBook Pro. I will show you how to calibrate both the older MacBook Pro that doesn't have a touch bar and a new MacBook Pro that has a touch bar. And I also have a Windows laptop here. In this case, it's more of a Windows tablet. It's a Surface Pro. But if you have a Windows device or any kind of Windows PC laptop for that matter, the calibration method and the way how you would go through changing the brightness and everything is very similar. The device that we'll be using today to do the calibration is the i1Display Pro, which is the device that I have right here in front of me. This device is a colorimeter. It primarily calibrates displays and projectors. It only does two things, but it does it really, really well, which I actually really like. The software that we're going to be using to do these calibration is the i1Profiler. Now, just something to keep in mind as well. Let's say if you've gone out there and you brought a dedicated display, like for example, a BenQ hardware calibrated display. When you have those display, what you want to use is the manufacturer proprietary software. And the reason why is because the adjustment is done inside the display itself. So you want to make sure that the software that you're using can talk and communicate with the computer that's inside the display. But since these displays are built into the device, we don't have to worry about that. We can just use the software calibration. In this case, we're going to use i1Profiler to do the profiling. Now, there's another class of device as well that I'm not going to show in this video, but the method of actually going and calibrating it is very similar. For example, those devices would be an iMac or an iMac Pro with a built-in display. You would calibrate it very similar to how you would do it on a MacBook Pro, or for example, if you have an HP or any other all-in-one PC with a built-in display, you would calibrate it very similar to how you would calibrate a laptop PC, okay? Now, one more thing that I like to include as well is that even though I'm going to be showing you how to calibrate these using the i1Display Pro, if you should have an i1 Studio, which is the one that I have in my hand right here, there you go, i1 Studio. If you have an i1 Studio or the previous Color Monkey Photo, you can always calibrate your display using these as well. This i1 Studio is a color spectral photometer. So what this will do as well, in addition to calibrating screens, projectors, it can also measure color. So for example, if you have like a piece of fabric, you want to know what color that is in RGB value, you can use this to measure it. You can use this to profile scanners, and also you can use this to profile paper, which is one of the more important features that this thing has. And this is a really good device to do all of those. But when it comes to screen calibration though, from my experience and from my extensive testing, I like the colorimeter much more. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to calibrate these different devices. One of the most important things when you're doing the screen calibration is setting the proper brightness. Now you might say that, well, I have a laptop. I'm going to take these laptops to so many places and I'm going to be editing the photos in so many different lighting environments. So for instance, you may be at a coffee shop and it could be a really nice coffee shop with nice lighting and so forth, kind of dim, subdued lighting, and you can set your screen to a proper brightness. But you may be at another coffee shop where you're at the sunset and there's like light streaming in the window. And you may wonder, how do you set the proper brightness in those situations where your lighting is constantly changing so much? The other thing too is that if you don't set the screen to a proper luminance value, or in this case the units for this value is candela, if you don't set it to the proper value, what's going to happen is this. You'll edit the photos, they look amazing on your screen. Then what happens is you send it to your printer, your photo printer that you have in your studio, or you send it to a photo lab. The result that you're going to get out of it is a much darker photo than what you see on your screen. At that point, you're going to be wondering, what's going on? Is my calibration wrong? Have I done something wrong with that? And no, you haven't done anything incorrectly. You just didn't set the proper luminance value in that case. So in order for us to avoid those kind of issues happening, we need to set the right luminance value. So in this video, what I'm going to do is go over the system settings to make sure that you turn off certain settings that would impede or interfere with the display calibration. And what I'm also going to do as well is talk about one of the most crucial things in display calibration, and that is the luminance value. I'm going to show you how to set the proper luminance value. And the other thing too is, more so than setting it, is that every device has a number. So I'm going to show you how to regain that proper luminance value from either full brightness or from the lowest brightness of your screen. And there's a way we can do that, and it will all make sense in the video. So let's get calibrating. I'll be doing a calibration on my MacBook Pro. However, on a Macintosh system, before we can go forward with our display calibration, even though I have i1Profiler launched and ready to go here, what I'm going to do is go into System Preferences first. Now that I'm in System Preferences, there's a few things that I need to go in and make sure that they are disabled and set properly so that our calibration will come out as best. So number one, we're going to go into the second row first icon under Display Setting. So we're going to go in under Display here. And the one thing we're going to make sure that it is disabled in this case is the automatically adjust brightness. If you don't have that disabled, what's going to happen is that as you take your laptop to different environments, your laptop screen is going to constantly adjust to those environments. And in that case, you won't have the proper luminance value. So you want to disable that. Secondly, if your laptop, which most Mac now have a night shift mode, you also want to disable night shift. So this way your laptop screen doesn't turn more warm or more cooler at certain set time of day. Now on the latest MacBook Pro, there's another feature as well called True Tone. In True Tone, what your laptop screen is trying to do is that your laptop has a sensor in there that's constantly measuring the ambient color temperature and is constantly adjusting the color temperature of your display to match the ambient. You want to make sure that you disable that as well. Now that we have actually taken care of most of the display settings, let's go back out to the System Preferences one more time, and there's a few more other things that we need to set up as well. The next thing we need to go in and look at is under Energy Saver, which is that LED icon right there. And under the Energy Saver settings, we want to make sure a couple of things happen. That first of all, when we're on power adapter, we want to make sure that we slide that slider for the turn display off after however many minutes or hours to never. In this case, we're doing this so that when we do the calibration, the display won't turn off in the middle of the calibration, ruining the calibration and forcing you to start over again. Afterwards, if you want to set it to a specific time frame that you like for the display to turn off, you can totally do that. Before the calibration, my recommendation is to set it to never. So that's the first thing. Secondly, you want to make sure you go and tap on the battery power tab. So under the battery power tab, in this case, I have my display turn off set to never as well. Again, depending on your power setting, you may have a different. But when you're calibrating your display, you probably should be plugged in anyway. So if you want to set your battery time off or the battery turn display off after to a set amount of time, you can totally do that. However, if you're doing a calibration while you're on battery power, make sure you set it to never. Secondly, there's one more important setting here that you want to make sure you disable. That setting is slightly dim the display while on battery power. Just go ahead and check that like I have here. From here on, you're ready to go. We can go back, and in fact, we can just close out the System Preferences, and in this case, I'm going to jump back into i1Profiler. So on a Windows device, in this case, I have the Surface Pro tablet. What you want to do here is go under the Windows command or press the Window key, and we're going to have to do a couple of things first. So the first thing we're going to do is go into the power and sleep setting. Right now, I'm running the Surface off the battery, so what I'm going to do is set the battery power, the screen to turn off to 30 minutes in this case. This will give me enough time for me to calibrate, and that also changes the sleep time as well. Everything else you can kind of leave it the same. The next thing what you need to do here is do a right click or a 2-finger tap on the touchpad on the desktop and go under Display Setting. So under Display Setting, the first thing that you want to come in and you want to disable is right here, change brightness automatically when lighting changes. So uncheck that. This way you don't have the screen changing brightness as you move into a different environment. Also make sure that night light right here is also turned off as well. Right now it's in off. This is an on position. it changes the color of the screen, so we want to make sure that that is off. You can leave everything else the same in terms of scaling and so forth, and now we are ready to launch i1Profiler. Now in the i1Profiler, there's two user modes that you can use. There is the basic and the advanced user mode. For me, I kind of like to really go in and control the settings for my profile, control the setting for my luminance, brightness, and everything. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on advanced. I already have advanced checked. Now what I'm going to do is go up here under profiling and click on that. i1Profiler itself is smart enough to detect the current display technology that you're using. In this case, I have the color LCD here, and if I tap on it, it's going to center on that display. Now, if I click on that drop-down menu below, I'm going to see a lot of display backlit technology, ccFL, wide gamut ccFL, wide LED, so on and so forth. In this case, like I said, the software is really good at detecting the current backlit technology, so I would just leave it the default the way how it is. If you tried it out and the profile is not looking really good and you don't really think you're getting a great result out of it, it's not always a bad idea to come back here and maybe change it to a setting that you may think the display corresponds to. For example, for my old laptop here, I might set it to RGB LED instead. But in this case, we'll use white LED. We'll use the default setting that it gives first for the best value. For the white point, generally the best thing to do is set the white point to CIE Illuminant of D65. So D65 is the standard that everybody is using right now for screen calibration, which is set to D65. Unless you have a reason to use any other device white point value, I would set it to D65. This is where the important part comes in, under luminance. The default wants us to set the display luminance to 120 candela. The 120 candela is a little bit too high. Generally what I like to do is I like to keep it around 100 candela in this case to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to 100 candela. Everything else, I'm going to leave it at default. Gamma is 2.2, contrast ratio, let's go to native. And then we're ready to go on to the next screen in the color calibration workflow. So next, this is where it asks a couple of settings here. So on a Macintosh, you'll generally be okay. It says profile setting, use default. The chromatic adaptation, we're going to use Bradford, which is the default. ccProfile version, we're going to use version 4 in this case. And profile type, we're going to use matrix. Now in this case, if you have a Windows PC and once you calibrate this and something is not looking right, you may want to come in here and change the ccProfile version to version 2. Sometimes Windows have some backward compatibility with version 4, so version 2 may be the better choice in this case. However, if you're on a Macintosh, version 4 works great. One more tip as well, if you're calibrating a projector, set it to version 2. It works better because of that. Alright, moving on to the next calibration screen. We're going to go, the next screen that we're going to see here is patch sets. I'm going to go in full screen here. This way we can see a little bit clearer what's on our screen. So patch set. The one thing is the default patch set is small. Generally my philosophy is this. I'm going to usually go for the largest patch sets possible that it gives. Now here's the case. I have tried this before and I've actually spent hours of calibration and throw in all the Pantone color chart in there, and the result was the calibration looks terrible. So in that case, don't do it. There is a point of diminishing return. However, the varying degree that it gives you, small, medium, and large patch sets, those are the great numbers to use. In this case, I always use large. When you use large patch sets here, it's going to take about 8 minutes to calibrate. Alright, moving on. Now we're ready for a measurement. So a couple of things that I'm going to go ahead and not use in this case is automatic display control, ADC. Disable ADC. If you enable ADC, the software is going to talk to the computer, is going to talk to the display, and it's going to try to automatically adjust the brightness setting, which is great. The problem is that you don't know what's the proper brightness setting value to set. So in this case, what we're going to do is adjust brightness, contrast, and RGB gain manually. I'm going to go ahead and check that box here, and we're ready to move on. So we see a lot of patch sets on our screen now. We're going to click on Start Measurement. Now that once we click on Start Measurement, we'll give it a second here. It's going to show us this screen. So this screen is going to tell us that we need to take our i1Display Pro here, rotate the cap around like so, and it just literally comes off like so. You have a device, pull this up, it comes up a little bit, and you just rotate it that way. Okay. Next thing is you want to make sure you adjust the counterweight so that it actually lays flat on the screen. so that this works for the screen size that you have, like so. The other thing too is I generally recommend tilting the screen back a little bit. And the reason why you want to tilt the screen back a little bit is to make sure that the colorimeter, or in this case the color spectrophotometer, or whatever device you have, lay flat on the screen without it tipping over and so forth, causing a bad reading or an error in calibration. I'm going to go ahead and click next here. It's going to run its initial patch set, and it's going to do a few things. So it's going to test the different patch sets that's going to come up, and it's measuring all the colors right now. Now we have arrived at the display brightness adjustment screen. The first thing you want to do is make sure you turn your laptop brightness up all the way. Now I'm using a 2015 MacBook Pro. Here in this case, it has an actual function key in the top. These are the non-touch bar keys. If you're using a Mac with a touch bar, I will have a separate segment showing how you can actually adjust the brightness precisely with that as well. However, let's go back and focus on my laptop here for now and how you would be doing it as well. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, since I already turned in the brightness up full, what I'm going to do here is count how many clicks I have to go down from full brightness to get the proper luminance value. So let's go ahead and start doing that. I'm going to start doing it right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's try 6. So 6 in this case works out fairly well. The target white point that I have set is 100. That's the one setting we have in the beginning. The measured value right now is 96, which is a really good value to have. On a laptop screen, you're never going to land exactly at the 100, 80, 100, 120. So in this case, you want to get it close enough. In this case, I feel like 96 is the close enough value, because if I go up one more to about 5, that value jumps to 120 right away. And I feel that that's a little bit too bright, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to 6 point down from full brightness, which has the luminance value of 96. Perfect. So you may ask, well, how do you come up with 6? Or how do you know it was going to be 6? Well, this is my laptop, and I calibrated so many Apple portable devices already. So from my experience, I found out that on any Apple portable devices, the range from full brightness, in this case, any Apple laptop, is anywhere between 5, 6, or 7. Okay, so that's a general number, and from experience, I know that. Now that we have the brightness set, what we can do is go ahead and click on Next. So once we click on Next here, this is in full automatic mode now. X-Rite i1Profiler is going to start to do the patch reading. So right now it's telling the progress on the bottom what patch is reading out of however many patches it have. In this case, it has 462 patches. This is going to take about 8 minutes or so. We'll probably speed this video forward. When you're trying to do an adjustment on an Apple laptop with touch bar, there's a few ways how you can do it, and you can do it precisely. The first thing we're going to do here is tap on here, and the thing to do sometimes is to not lift your finger, and you can dial this up and down. You can still see the screen showing the brightness value, and you can kind of count from there, but it's not as easy to count, and it's not as precise sometimes. So one of the easier way to do it is to just tap on the brightness, and what you can do from here is use the handler on the left and the right. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and tap down. I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll leave it at 5 here, and in this case, I got the luminance value of 104 candela, which is awesome. So I can close this out there. Another way to do it is to tap on the little caret icon there, or the less than icon, and then what you can do is you will get the standard function key that shows up, and the first two function key, these are going to be the brightness keys, so you can use these to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from full brightness, and you can get the precise value count the very same way. So you don't have to always go in there, tap, hold, and then slide. You can always go in and just tap like so, and just use the handler. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that is an Apple laptop or portable device with a touch bar. So right now we see on Windows that the brightness is at full right now because I already brought this up earlier. The key thing here is to find a shortcut key on your keyboard. Now on some PCs, on the keyboard itself, there'll be a brightness or luminance or display luminance change. On some is through a function key. So for example, on this Microsoft tablet Surface tablet here, you have to hold the function key down, and it's the backspace and the delete key on the top right corner that will change the display brightness. So I'm holding down the function key at the moment, and what I'm doing right now is I'm going to go ahead and use the backspace key to bring the brightness down, and this is where you would count. In this case, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's try it at 5. So 5 brought it down to 89. Let's go up to about 4. And in this specific case, you kind of have to go between one or the other. You can go to 125, or if you go down one more, you will be at 89. You're kind of in between the values here. So let's do that one more time. I'm going to go ahead and hold down the function key, and let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and that should bring it to about 125 candela. In this case, because it is a smaller device, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the luminance level at 125 candela and go forward and calibrate it with this luminance instead. It won't be at directly 100, and as I mentioned before, it's hard to get these portable device luminance level to show up exactly at the value that you want it to be. So now that we are done with the calibration part, the screen will tell us to pick up the color calibrator, in this case our colorimeter here, and what we're going to do is rotate it so that the diffusion thing is actually covering the sensor part. Just kind of set it to the side, and then it will actually exit onto this screen right here. So this is kind of showing our measurement at the moment, and what we're going to do is click on next to the ccProfile tab. Now the default name for the ccProfile, it's generally pretty good. It will tell you what screen is calibrating, and it will also give you the date within the file name as well. However, if you want to, you can always go ahead and modify this. I'm just going to leave this as is. And what I'm going to do now is click on Save Profile. So once I click on Save Profile, it's going to pop up saying Profile saved successfully. Please click OK. I just did. So now I have a custom profile for my display. What I'm going to do now, though, before I continue this, is I'm going to go ahead and click on Home, and this is something that you should always do when you do display calibration, is to do a quality check. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and click on Quality. I'm going to go into full screen again here because it kicks me out of full screen briefly. And what I'm going to do is just use X-Rite ColorChecker Classic. The default one tends to work really well. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next and click on Start Measurement. It's going to pop up with the same screen we've seen earlier. What we have to do is take the colorimeter here, pull that out, rotate, hang the colorimeter to which it will automatically detect. Click on Next. And now what it's doing is it's going to pop up all those colors, and it's going to do a measurement. So what it's doing right now is that all those colors has a predefined value in CIE Lab. So what it's doing is that it's measuring the values that the screen is displaying with this custom profile that we created against the value that is known for, or against the set standard value of a CIE Lab for all these colors. We'll give this one a second. This doesn't take too long. It's only 24 patches. Then once this is done, there we go. Once this is done, we'll take this off, rotate the cover back on again, set this on the table. And now what we can do is go into the next box down here under Display QA Workflow and click on QA Report. So in the QA report here, we get a couple of values that we can see. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And we have a couple, like I said, we have a couple of values. The result right now is showing, again, pass, which is actually not bad. So the average delta E, in my case here, for my profile, I got a measured value of 0.62, which is really decent. And it will give you the lowest, the highest, and also the maximum delta E value if you continue to read down the list. In this case, my maximum delta E value is 3.76. Is that a good value? It's an okay value. It's not the best value. It's not the worst value. So what is delta E anyway? Delta E, what it comes down to is the variation between the color that is measured versus the color of the reference, for all those actual color patches. And essentially what it is that there's an average delta E. The average tells us between all the patches that is measuring, how off are these colors displaying right now. When you can get the delta E value, anything below 2 is considered excellent. Anything below 1 in 0 point something is always going to be better. In this case, our maximum delta E value, 3.76, is a little high. Now, just to give you a frame of reference, a display is considered acceptable with a delta E value of anything below a 5. So technically we are okay here. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but this is one of those situations in life where we don't have a lot of options. This is the display that is built into our portable device. It's not that we can swap it out for another display. So this gives us an idea. If you spend a lot of time in one location editing, whether that be at home, at your office, or in the studio, it's always a great idea to buy a hardware calibrated display. This way you can have a reference display within your workplace so that when you view the colors, you know that you're viewing true colors, you're viewing tones of colors without any compression, unlike the software calibration that's happening here. So in this video, we have gone over the crucial settings that you must disable before you do a software calibration. We have talked about the luminance value, which is very important in this case to make sure you always have that correctly. And now you're ready to edit on your portable device and you always have great and accurate colors. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave them in a comment below, and I hope that you do enjoy this video.